today we'll be discussing about the questions which were asked in General Studies Paper 1 of Mains Examination 2022. There were three questions asked from modern Indian history. Since we focus more on modern India and we expect 3 to 4 questions every year, this time also there were three questions from modern Indian history. But there is a change in the pattern of question in the preference of the topic. The three questions which has been asked this time, these questions are largely from the first phase of modern India. The first phase of modern India means the phase under the rule of British East India Company. In other words, there are no questions from Indian national movement. So quite surprising in nature that every year questions are asked from Indian national movement, but this time the questions are not from Indian national movement. There are three questions, two questions related to political expansion of British India and another question on famines. And the third question is related to reorganization from the middle of 19th century. Clear? So in between, the national movement has not been touched this time. This makes it clear that from next year also, candidates needs to be well prepared mentally that their questions may not be from national movement, and at the same time they need to prepare all parts of modern history thoroughly. That is the first part from British establishment till the post-independence era. Another surprising trend this time is questions are not from world history, but every year one or two questions are asked. Maybe next year they will be asking one or two questions from world history. So internal changes do take place, but obviously from history module, every year we get 6-7 questions. This time three questions from modern India, three questions from art and culture has been asked this time. Clear? So we'll be discussing all these questions asked this time. What should have been the approach of your answer? All the answers were to be formulated. What was to be written in introductory part? What points were to be covered in the body, and ultimately what basically was to be the concluding part of your answer. The first question from modern India which was asked this time was, why did the armies of the British East India Company, mostly comprising of Indian soldiers, win consistently against the more numerous and better equipped armies of the then Indian soldiers? Give reasons. You just have to highlight reasons and you have to write 150 words. No, just to start the discussion. First of all, whenever you read any question, the first thing to be done is to understand the question in right perspective. And while understanding the question in right perspective, you need to highlight the key words of the question. So why? That is, the reasons has been asked. Why did the armies of the British East India Company, mostly comprising of Indian soldiers, they were known as sepoys, win consistently against the more numerous and better equipped armies of the then Indian soldiers? So question says, why was the factor, why it happened that the Indians, so British soldiers comprising of Indians only, won consistently against the more numerous and better equipped armies of the then Indian soldiers? So context, first of all, would be the introduction. In history, while writing introductory part, you need to highlight the context of the question, the background in which the question has been framed. What would be the context of this question? Context would be that from the middle of the 18th century, British East India Company began to acquire political power by recruiting Indian soldiers only. And these soldiers, known as sepoys, they served their master very well just because of one factor, That factor was lack of modern sense of nationalism. So introduction would be that British East India Company recruited Indian soldiers or sepoys to defeat other Indian powers, largely because sense of modern nationalism was absent among Indian inhabitants. Clear? Then coming to the major reasons that will flow from here. The major reasons will be explained along with examples. Clear? The first reason obviously will be the feeling of regionalism or parochialism dominated over nationalism. So first major factor would be feeling of regionalism overshadowed sense of nationalism. Feeling of regionalism overshadowed sense of nationalism. In fact, India during the rule of British East India Company was a mere geographical entity without any sense of modern nationalism. Every people in different parts of the country, they were more concerned about their region rather than a nation. And just because of this, British East India Company recruited soldiers from different parts and employed them to fight against other provinces, and this led to establishment of British rule. Clear? The most important example to indicate why they won consistently against numerous better good power, the most important example that is indicate this phenomena is the Battle of Buxar. If you look into Battle of Buxar, fought in 1764. In this Battle of Buxar, three Indian powers of Mir Qasim, Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II, and the ruler of Awadh, Shuja'ud-Dawla, combined together, fought against the British power, but they were thoroughly defeated in one single stroke. Clear? That indicate that even though they were numerically superior, they were better equipped, but then also they could not compete against the soldiers of British East India Company, who were well organized, well disciplined, well coordinated. So one major factor was obviously feeling of regionalism overshadowed the sense of nationalism. Here also in Battle of Buxar, they didn't show any coordination. All of them belonged to different regions. They fought separately, and that became very easy for British to defeat Indian powers. Second major factor that led to the defeat of Indian powers, this second factor was caste differences that existed among Indians. Indians by this time were largely divided according on caste lines. This was not only true for Hindu society, it was equally true for a Muslim society as well. And large number of people belonging to Indian society, they've had differences related to caste. Upper caste people did not tolerate the lower caste people, and that is why sense of unity or bonding was missing. And just because of lack of sense of bonding and unity, it became much easier for the British to recruit large number of Indians to defeat Indian powers. For example, I'll let you know, British defeated Marathas in India largely because Marathas were not supported by other sections of society. Clear? There was huge amount of caste differences that existed in the region of Western India between Peshwas on the one hand and Maratha soldiers on the other hand. Maratha soldiers were under the control of Peshwas. Peshwas were Brahmins and Marathas belonged to lower social order. That is why such differences got manifested, and it enabled to British even the most developed power, better equipped power, Marathas in western part of India. So this became another major factor that led to the defeat of Indian powers. Next one major factor that led to defeat of Indian power was religious factor. Why religious factor? Some powers in India fought only on religious lines. That enabled British to defeat them because British brought Indian soldiers from other areas, from different religions, and that enabled them to defeat Indian powers. For instance, the Sikh state of Punjab. after the death of Ranjit Singh, began to have large Sikh forces. In order to defeat Sikh forces, Lord Dalhousie in the Second Anglo-Sikh War deputed soldiers from northern part of India, and these soldiers from northern part of India, like the Pathans, the Gurkhas, enabled them to defeat the Sikh army. Obviously, identified on one religion, this could not be sustained, and people belonging to different religions enabled the British to defeat Indian power that led to British victory in India. The third major factor was the religious factor in India. Apart from this, the other major factors were British in India proved to be a good paymaster, and Indian sources were not the good paymaster because of economic condition. So a large number of Indian soldiers gave their true service to their masters because of regular payment, and this enabled British to defeat Indian powers easily. Clear? Moreover, at the same time, Indian powers could not maintain large military force because of the mutual jealousies also. Clear? Just jealousies got indicated clearly between the rulers of Mysore against the Marathas and the Nizam. British were able to win away the Marathas and the Nizam against Mysore, and this enabled the defeat of the rulers of Mysore, that is Tipu Sultan, and this led to conquest of Mysore as well. So with these examples and factors, you have to explain that what major factors were responsible for the defeat of Indian powers by the British, even though it was marked by only Indian soldiers, and Indian soldiers defeated other Indian powers that led to political supremacy of the British East India Company. Clear? These major factors with examples are to be written. And in the end, you will write that just because of such lack of modern nationalism, a private trading company emerged to be the politically supreme power in India by the middle of the 19th century. This would complete your answer. So this was to be the format in which the first answer was to be written.